Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the OHM podcast. This week I'm joined by Michael Rossetti. Now, Michael is co founder and CEO of the Social Ads, and these guys are a digital marketing agency which helps ecom brands and businesses scale and grow. So, Michael, first off, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you for having me today.
Cool. And then just diving straight into it, then Social Ads, your agency. As co founder,
Yeah,
you've been there since the beginning. Can you just walk me through that journey and what it's been like?
yeah, for sure. So we started 2021 right in the midst of iOS 14. So me and my best friend from childhood, we essentially came together and said, "Hey, we want to do our own thing." I was working in a SaaS company doing sales, so I learned that skill, practiced for a couple of years, and then at the same time, he was working in a different marketing agency over in the States, and he just perfected his marketing skills, but he wasn't 100% happy with um, kind of the culture or how they were working with clients, or there were some things where he thought, okay, I can actually do this better. So he said, you know what? I have that entrepreneurial spirit in me. Why not give it a shot? And one day he just comes to me and he says, "Hey, do you want to try this new thing?" And I said, "Sure, why not? Let's give it a try." And that's how it came to be. And what followed was, I think, a year and a half, or maybe a bit more than that, with both of us working kind of the regular job. And then once we were done with that in the afternoon, then like switching gears and moving to the agency. So it was a fun couple of years, but it all worked out, and here we are today.
Nice. And can you just talk me through, in terms of the services you offer, what that was like at the start and what that's like now?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, it's evolved quite a bit. We started with just paid ads, specifically Facebook, Meta advertising, and then also creative editing, and that was it. That was the main service because he's an expert in paid ads. He's a Meta media buyer by nature, so that was the first thing that we did. And then as we started growing, we started adding more services. So then we did Google, we added Google, then TikTok was becoming a thing, and obviously he learned TikTok quite fast because it wasn't that different to Meta. So we added that, and then we slowly dived into retention as well, email, SMS. And one thing that we noticed was that a lot of the times when we were working, especially in the beginning with the smaller brands, a lot of the issues were on the website, on the conversion rate. And it was very difficult because even though the paid ads looked like they were working, once the traffic got on the lander, there was a disconnect there. So a lot of the times the owners or the founders, they didn't have like a lot of capital to spend on expensive CRO services. So that prompted us, okay, we need to do something about this. So then we started adding landing pages as well and figuring out what happens post click. And that brings us to today where we do all of those things that I mentioned. That took quite a bit of time. That took a few years.
Okay. And what was the
Yeah.
reason behind kind of adding on all of these services? Because you're pretty much full stack now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I wish I had a better answer, but it's an interesting little story. So about a year after we got started, we weren't growing as fast as we wanted, as probably a lot of people, and we were thinking, hey, how can we grow faster? And for some reason, I think it was around the time when I discovered the $100 million offers by Hormozy, and then I said, okay, an offer is what I need. So how can I craft the perfect offer for ecom brands? And my thought process was, hey, what if we offer all of these services and we do it at a better rate than everybody else, and then we throw in a crazy guarantee too, because that's a great idea. And then we tried that, and what do you know, it worked, and we had so much business that we couldn't handle it. So it was kind of collapsing because of the offer, and it wasn't even like a lot of it wasn't recurring. So that was a big issue. So now you're stuck in a situation where you have to provide all these different pieces of the puzzle that you haven't mastered yet, and at the same time there's not a lot of revenue coming in, but you have a lot of clients, so you can't hire the people to deliver. So huge mistake. So then we stepped back and we said, okay, let's focus on what we do best, and then slowly start adding the pieces of the puzzle on top. And yeah, that's how we got here. I would say paid ads and creatives are still the bread and butter, and it's still think 90% of the clients that we work with, that's the main reason why they choose to work with us. But now I feel like it's transitioning even more to creative, specifically user-generated content. UGC is probably the number one thing that people want nowadays. And a lot of brands do need it, still, like they do need it. So
Okay. In
yeah,
terms of those services, so like I said, you're almost full stack. Are you doing that
yeah.
for everyone, or is there kind of a roadmap that people need to go on? Maybe start with creative,
hmm
Google after that. What does that journey look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So almost all of the brands start with some form of paid ads. It's typically Meta, and then creatives we do as part of it. So we wouldn't do them separately. The only time where we do separate them is if we're doing just UGC content. So I'll give you an example. I had a larger brand come to us, and they had paid ads figured out, their retention, and as most 8 and 9 figure brands do. But they just needed a fresh perspective when it comes to content, specifically UGC. So we just put together a UGC package where we just do the user generated content. We take care of like finding the creators, the briefs, post production, all that good stuff, and that's it. And they can do more of that, or they can stop after one package depending on the needs. But most people they start with, let's say, Meta or TikTok, the creatives, and then as it's performing, we add Google sometimes even from the beginning. And then retention is more of a upsell, I want to say. It's more something that happens 3 6 months down the line when they see, okay, we're getting solid performance out of the ads. What happens when we get them to do retention as well? And then you have that harmony, which for us works really well because you have one partner doing all of the pieces, and it's a lot easier to coordinate. It's a lot easier to work with, and I feel like it works for most of the brands. And I think out of our roster today, I would say like 90% is pretty much everything, from creatives, ads, retention, all of it.
Nice. And where
Yeah.
in that journey do landing pages come in?
So that's an interesting one because we never actually sold landing pages as a like offer, like we'll do landers for X amount or whatnot. It's more, we work with a brand, we do paid ads, and we notice, hey, like we really need to implement a landing page. And while most people would charge, I don't know, 2, 3, 4,000, I don't know, we just say, hey, look, like we really need this to be able to improve the performance. And a lot of the times we just go ahead and do it. Like we just do it because mm, most of the brands that we work with at a certain point, if not all of them actually at this point, there's a performance element that kicks in. So there's a commission or compensation model based on obviously hitting targets and all that. And then if we notice, okay, a landing page would definitely help us with the performance of the ads, and we know that in the long run, it's gonna make sense for everybody. I'd rather now wait for either hiring a CRO agency or going through budget approvals or whatnot, and I can just go ahead and do it. It's a lot faster, quicker, and just gets us the results. Is it the best business decision? I don't know. Some folks might say, "Well, you're crazy. Why are you giving away, probably thousands of dollars worth of free stuff?" But our main metric as an agency is the lifetime value of a client, and it's a fine balance between, okay, we want to make sure they get the best experience, and they stay with us as long as possible, and just overstepping the boundaries and starting diving into areas that we shouldn't be diving into. But for us, over the last couple of years, it's been a success. Like, I want to say it's been a huge success doing it this way. So
And will you dive into other aspects of the brand too, like offer positioning, financials, and all of that stuff, or is it just outsourced CMO essentially?
Oh no, for sure. We'll go through, like, very in depth in terms of unit economics, their financials, as in depth as we can. It depends from brand to brand, of course, and what they also have in house. But we like to go as deep as we can go because understanding the numbers behind the brand is so important, especially if we're working with someone that's not so much interested in getting the highest ROAS possible on the first purchase, but maybe a CPG brand, they're looking at their lifetime value of a customer, their CAC, and then we really want to understand, okay, how long does it take for them to realize the revenue once we acquire the first customer? Can we take a loss on the first order? So on and so forth. So it's super important that we do that. And honestly, I don't know how you would even drive performance without understanding the financials. It's just it has to make sense for both parties. So just charging a retainer or whatnot without understanding how everything like the grand picture affects their bottom line, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. And that's something that I do in the initial calls, like before we onboard them. I always go through the unit economics, understand, okay, what kind of targets are we looking at? Are they realistic? Can we actually hit those targets? That's very, very important to align expectations as well, right? When they get onboarded, there's a misalignment in terms of expectations, and we figure out, oh, actually, what you need is this, whereas we thought it's much lower. There's gonna be a big disconnect there, and I don't think the onboarding experience is going to be very pleasant at that point.
For sure. And just kind of
Yeah.
digging into that deeper, when you're looking at a brand or a lead that's come to you, are there certain green flags that you just tick off straight away and you're like, I want to work with this person?
Yeah, definitely. There's green flags, there's red flags. I'll tell you a red flag and I'll tell you some green flags as well. But a big one is when one of the first things that I hear is, we've tried 4 agencies this year and it's like August and none of them have worked. And I'm like, okay, well, something's off somewhere, and I'm not sure if they're all good. That 4 different pairs of eyes said that, but that's one. And then green flags is just when they have a very good understanding once again of their numbers, when they know exactly what the numbers are behind the brand, when they understand the financials, when they understand the contribution margin, when they understand all those things. That is a big green flag because it shows us that we're talking to someone who's got experience and who knows what they're doing and who knows what they're expecting. And that plays also into the realistic targets. If you want to grow 300% year over year, and every year up until this point you've been growing 50, like okay, it might be doable, but at the same time, like we need to be a bit realistic here. Um, yeah, those are some of the things, and then there's the culture aspect, right? How they communicate, expectations also from the agency. Um, that's also shown, I think, in the initial calls, and it's very easy to tell if there's a good connection there or whatnot, because I like to think of it as like working with a partner, especially external, is like a marriage. It's not like a one-time thing and that's it. So it's very important that you align there, and then the results part, of course. Um, so those are some, and then the other one is a strong organic presence. A strong organic presence is a green flag, more on the result side, but we all know how important organic is. And someone jumping straight into ads, zero organic, it's going to be difficult, especially, it's the case in the early stages of building a brand. But later on, I think it's crucial to have built that organic presence. So yeah, I think those are some. I'm sure there's others that don't come to mind
Are
right
there
now.
any, you touched on one there with the organic presence. Are there any other characteristics of the business that you look at, maybe gross margin or something like that, that you're like, this is a green flag and this is a client we want to work with?
Yeah, the unit economics again is super important, because yeah, I actually have one example off the top of my head. We had a brand on board that was selling a product for $280, and we were getting a 4.5x return on ad spend, and the CAC was looking healthy. I think it was like $60 or $70, which wasn't bad for that price point. And it wasn't not even close to what they needed. Like they needed a CAC of like $25-$30. The ROAS was through the roof. And that was a mistake on my part. It was a while ago, and it was a mistake on my part because those are things that I should have uncovered in the initial discussions, and I didn't. We didn't go through the unit economics, which we do now. Um, so making sure we go through this and making sure the numbers make sense and it's realistic, that is a huge green flag. That is big.
Okay. And in terms of organic, so you said, strong organic presence. What are you specifically looking for? Are you looking for, having driven sales and scaled to a certain level without ads? Or what does that mean?
That is one thing, yes. It's also because organic fuels the paid, right? So the better your organic presence, don't want to say quicker, but the higher the chances are paid is also going to work. and it just makes life easier for you as a brand. So it could be, it could be, you have a lot of followers, you have a lot of, people liking and whatnot, but it's also a loyal customer base. And when you see people raving about the products, especially on TikTok, we had a client that someone just purchased their product, just a random customer, and they did a video about it on TikTok. And it went crazy. It did 2.5 million views in 24 hours, completely wiped out the stock. It was crazy. So you bet the next thing we did was reach out to her and ask her if we can use the video as an ad. And as you can imagine, it did just as well on paid. And it just shows how important the organic presence is. So those are some of the things that I look at. It's not a must-have. Like you can definitely run ads even if you don't have, 1 million followers on Instagram. It's definitely not needed, but it helps. Like you don't need running shoes to run, but it helps. It's the same kind of idea.
What would you say to a brand owner that's getting started? What should be the first things they do before speaking to an agency?
So nailing the product, making sure you have product market fit, making sure again organic, you're consistent on organic, um, making sure you figured out the unit economics, you're fully aware, of your targets of what you need, aligning all of those things. And then I would also say for bootstrap brands, there's a certain revenue as well and profit that you should be making in order to be able to afford a good agency. Um, because when you're literally just getting started and you're bootstrapped, it's very difficult to be able to do that. And the quality of service that you get, it's not going to be what you're looking for ideally to hit your revenue and growth goals. So I would say those are some of the things. With that said, again, like we've had brands, we've had clients where they had launched their Shopify a week before they contacted us, and we had massive scale. 8 months grew them to $350,000 a month. But the founders had two previous exits and had a lot of cash that they could pour into the business, influencer marketing, those kind of things. So it's a bit of a different situation in that case. It's of course a lot easier versus when you're bootstrapping.
Okay. So initially it's, product, know your numbers inside out, and then get
Yeah.
some kind of traction organically.
Yeah, and I would say also if you can do influencer seeding, if you can send products to people, not even asking for anything in return, because at that point, if you have a really good product, people will talk about it, people will share it. Um, if you can deploy some resources, paying the influencers or not, that's also very helpful. But I think those things are super super helpful, and then also incentivizing customers. To either send back some form of reviews, videos preferred, even from the early stages. I think that is super, super helpful.
Okay, so a lot of it revolves around content.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah,
Okay,
content is king.
cool. And now shifting gears slightly. So I know your responsibility at the agency is mainly on the growth side. Can you
Yeah.
just walk through your kind of day-to-day responsibilities and what you're doing?
Yeah, a lot of sales, a lot of lead gen, marketing for the agency. Um, of course, working together with the team. My co-founder works closer than me with the team because he oversees the entire service delivery, so he's more on top of things when it comes to our actual team. But when it comes to my day to day, it's primarily meetings, a lot of meetings, and more meetings on top. And then I'm trying to, stay as consistent as possible with our organic. So practicing what we preach. Um, and yeah, those are the main, I would say the main things, getting involved into the major deals that we have. Um, I would say those are kind of the main things. And there's little things like finance is that everything running smoothly. Obviously we have an accountant and everything, but I like to keep an overview. Operations, so, standard operating procedures, systems, those kind of things as well. I'm a systems guy. I'm a numbers nerd, so I like to do those things as well. So when I do have the time, I like to go in and make sure things are running smoothly.
Okay. And on the lead gen side, how has that changed over time, and what are you guys finding success with now?
Yeah, it's very interesting because lead gen, there's a bunch of different ways you can do lead gen. You have, cold email, you have organic posting, paid ads, whatnot. We started with cold email initially, um, back in, like I said, 2021, and it was very different than today. Um, you know, the conversion rates on cold email were crazy, even without a really good offer. And up to this date, we're still cold email is still the primary channel. Like it's still the primary channel. It's changed a lot. We've done it in house. We've done it through external partners. Right now, we're doing it fully in house. But it's still the main driver of meetings. The big difference today is the offer. Like when it comes to cold email, it's all about the offer because, especially in ecom, everybody's cold emailing in ecom, like every agency, every freelancer, everybody. So offer, standing out with a good offer is super important. So that's huge. And then the other thing that's also huge is organic. Organic, staying consistent on organic, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, what have you. It is the long-term game, but I've noticed whenever somebody goes and actually consumes the content and then you get in front of them and you actually talk to them, it's a million times easier. It is so much easier. Um, and I think just organic, if there's one thing I would do differently, is go back and just start posting day one. Obviously, I don't have all the experience and everything I've gathered throughout the time, but it's so, so big. And actually, there's one more thing that not a lot of folks do, at least not that I know of in the agency slash ecom space specifically, and that is cold calling. Cold calling has been working so well for us. It's been crazy over the last couple of months. I feel like the competition is a lot lower when it comes to calling because the barrier to entry is a lot higher than cold emailing. So not a lot of people do it. And if you do it well and you know how to do it, it's scalable. It's not that expensive and it works. It works really well. So those are the three main ways. We've dabbled into paid ads a bit. Um, didn't find a or didn't break through when it comes to paid ads yet, but we also didn't put like a lot of emphasis on paid ads because the other channels are working. And then you have things like, of course, referrals and word of mouth and those things. But besides delivering a fantastic service and experience, there's not much that you can do there.
In terms of the offer, what are you guys leading with? Is it, the full stack side? Is there a certain kind of guarantee? What does that look like?
No, we're just going. So the guarantee, I learned my lesson, not doing that one again. And the one offer that's working really, really well right now, and I can see a huge response, positive response from the market is UGC. So we are literally doing a couple of free pieces of UGC for brands. That's the offer. That's the offer we're using cold email. And it's crushing because why would you say no? There's no strings attached. You don't have to sign anything. You don't need to pretty much do anything except ship the product to a creator that you get to pick. And the response we've gotten is really good. So very, very high likelihood that the conversation progresses once the content is delivered, and it's just working super well. From the only drawback is obviously it takes a longer time to go through a deal because of course you need to go through the content and deliver the content and all that. But I think the upside is huge if you do a great job, of course.
For sure. That's interesting. And on
Yeah.
the cold calling side, is that something you're doing or have you outsourced that?
So that's what I was doing at the SaaS company before. I did that for about a year and a half, and then I managed a team of 10, 15 people doing that. So I gathered a lot of experience when it comes to like cold calling and cold outbound in general. So then when I implemented it here, I already had the systems. I already knew, okay, I know what to do. I know the frameworks. I know the scripts or whatnot. So I already know what to do. So I just went ahead and I hired someone right away. And we hired multiple people, as it typically is when you hire a person for that position. And then we found one person that's on the team right now that is absolutely, I've never seen anything like it. He's booking 30% plus of conversations with decision makers, which I've never seen. It's really crazy, and they're good meetings. So really happy with that. Don't have the time to do it myself anymore, unfortunately. I do pick up the phone from time to time, but I've definitely gotten a bit rusty when it comes to cold calling.
For sure. I can imagine. And on
Yeah.
that cold calling, are they calling cold scripts, like an Apollo lead list, or are they reaching out to warm leads that have maybe responded positively before?
We do both, but I would say 90% is pure cold. Like literally, we've got a system where we get the leads, we get the numbers, everything. Then they get verified, making sure, okay, they're the right person. We want to talk to them. The business is right. So they go through a couple of steps because I also don't want my setters to spend hours a day just calling leads that make no sense. And then it's just pure cold. It's just never heard of us before, you know, pure cold. And then there's a small percent of inbound as well. It's typically free resources or a bit of paid ads, and then they get to call these, and that's a bit of a warmer conversation, but it's nothing too crazy. I would say still the cold calling, pure cold is the big one.
It's like old school sales.
Old school sales, exactly. That's it.
I guess this is an interesting one for marketing in general, is the channels which people have moved on from. You often get the best returns from, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also because when I was at the SaaS company, that was like 2019, 2020. 2021. The crazy thing is people were getting calls, but we were calling mainly in Europe, whereas now it's mainly focused on North America. And obviously, people are cold calling every day, everywhere. That's still the case. But I feel like particularly in our vertical in ecom, it's not as much as I see in something like SaaS, for example, where it's building those huge SDR teams and account executive teams, and then like banging almost Wolf of Wall Street style the phone. It's definitely not at that level here, but it doesn't need to be because, like you said, people aren't doing it. So it's efficient, it's effective. I can't remember the last time I had someone tell me, "Wow, I get 10 calls a day. I'm getting spammed all day." Like myself, I haven't gotten a cold call in like 5 years. Even when I was managing the team back at the other company, I wasn't getting them. And the crazy thing is, my number was public. It wasn't that hard to find. Even today, it's not that hard to find. So you can find the number, and I'm sure it's in Apollo or some database, but people aren't doing it, which is, to me, there's an opportunity there.
For sure.
Yeah.
And just taking another look at kind of the ops piece of the business, how do you guys coordinate that service delivery? Because you've got a lot of kind of moving parts.
Yeah. So my co-founder is involved a lot still, especially when it comes to client communications. We do have a project manager, account manager on board who has grown tremendously. He's been with us for about 2 years now, and he's grown tremendously because at the beginning he had no experience, and now he's just client comms, making sure everything's delivered on time, jumping on calls with clients if there's an issue, like pretty much everything, and then coordinating the creative department, paid ads department, the email department. So he's doing a fantastic job right now, and I think together the two of them are really kind of piecing the puzzle together. But um, for us, the clients, they have access to everyone in the team. They have access to our creative strategies. They have access to our email marketer if they want to talk to anybody. They always have access, and then we manage to keep everything centralized in ClickUp. So all the SOPs, all the systems, everything sits in ClickUp, and then each client gets a specific location in ClickUp where they can find things like creative approvals, email design approvals, which I'm sure a lot of people have. But it works. It works really well. I found that just relying on Slack is not necessarily a mistake, but it's very difficult, especially as you get more clients on board, because stuff will get lost in the channels and then deadlines get missed. But having everything in ClickUp and then having somebody who owns that for each client, that is just managed, like everything runs smoothly, like clockwork. And it's also scalable. It's also scalable because just creating different pods as you scale and pairing the people together, which again, I'm sure is nothing new, but for us, it works. It works really well. So
And are there any challenges on the ops side that you're working through currently?
any challenges, you mean with the operations and the client specifically, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, a big one is actually showing the clients and getting the clients to use ClickUp or the system. So most people, it's actually funny. I had a client recently that we onboarded, amazing, amazing client. Love working with them. And the first the first round of feedback for the creatives, they just printed everything on a piece of paper, and then they were like just drawing everything on a piece of paper. I thought it was so, I've never had someone do that. It was so cool. And then, a project manager, he jumped on a call with them and kind of got them sorted. But a lot of times it's difficult because they would just drop things in Slack or just send an email to me or somebody else, and then we always have to make sure that we get them back. Hey, it needs to stay here, otherwise we'll lose track of it. And that's one challenge. It's also because you can only tell them so much, or you can only show them so much, or you can only do so much. At some point, you can't just keep pushing the same idea, and that's a challenge. That's one thing. And then another thing is, for example, they might have a development team in house or somebody else that they're working with, and then we need some changes on the website. For example, Labor Day is coming up, and we need to, put some banners on the website or do some changes on the website. And it can be tough just coordinating the teams and making sure it's on time and making sure, like, everything gets out at the same time. That's a big one. But yeah, overall, I don't think it's too bad. I think we're hanging. I think it's actually pretty well.
I think those are kind of standard agency problems, right? Coordination and communication are the big two.
Yeah, yeah. And then as you scale, one thing I've learned is you scale, if you really haven't nailed down when you have these systems or these SOPs when you're small, which we hadn't when we started, we didn't have anything. And then as you start adding on more and more clients, then it suddenly the sandcastle starts collapsing, and that's when you have an issue. Luckily, we identified it still in good time. But yeah, having this is, making sure the operational side is also set in place and can support scale. It's mandatory. Otherwise, it's gonna become a nightmare when you start, getting a few more clients on board.
For sure. And the final piece, kind of on this operational topic, you said before that if you could go back in time and start again, and speak to the Michael at the beginning of the agency journey, you would pump out kind of organic content. Are there any other pieces of advice you'd pass on?
Yeah, $100 million offers is amazing, but don't do the thing you did. Just don't do it that way. You did it the wrong way. Don't don't just like what we did that was wrong, and that I learned much later. Um, Expanding into a lot of other services, or even from your core service, just because you see people growing at a faster rate or whatnot, because they have multiple services, maybe not even, is not a good idea. And then doing that without a clear plan, without like the necessary resources on board, even though it gets you clients, it's gonna collapse and it's not gonna be fun. So that's I think that might be the biggest mistake we've done. And then yeah, starting to organic earlier, that would be the next one. I think those two, but definitely I think you can scale to at least 1 million a year in revenue with just one core offer service, just specializing in one thing. And I know agencies that are doing well above that, that just do Meta, nothing else, just paid ads on Meta. That's it. And it's working. So
I think that's a Hormozy quote as well, isn't it? One offer, one service, one channel, and that's 1 million a
that's
year.
it. Yeah, that's it. Exactly. I wish I had known that back then.
Read that chapter in the book.
Yeah.
So, interestingly enough, you have a very international background, and it's one of the things I like about working in this space. Can you just walk
Mhm.
me through, yeah, your kind of personal story? So, where you grew up, where you're from, and then where you're living, and future plans.
Yeah, so grew up in Romania, a remote town in the west side that probably nobody's heard about. And as soon as I turned 18, 19, basically when I finished high school, I moved to Denmark because I found out that in Denmark they pay you to go to school if you're a European citizen. So of course, I moved to Denmark, and I spent 7, almost 8 years in Denmark. I did my university. I don't have a cool dropout story or anything. I did finish the university, and then I tried. Well, I did my first business, which was Amazon FBA, which was actually quite successful. And then moved on to drop shipping. Did that for a bit, and then eventually got started on the agency. And at the same time, I got this job at the SaaS company. I really wanted to learn sales. I didn't really know anything about sales, to be honest. So I spent quite a few years there just working and honing the sales skills, appointment setting, sales. That was it. I didn't really care about the money. It was more, I just want to learn the skills. And I was fortunate to work with some really, really great people that taught me pretty much everything I know. And then around that same time is when we started the agency. And then last year, I got to Tenerife, which is where I am now, a little Spanish island, very sunny, completely the complete opposite of Denmark and Copenhagen. Um, so very happy and still here. And for the future, most likely than not, we're going to move to the US. The business is already located in Miami, US LLC, and that's the plan for us as well. Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Okay. On that point, do you see the US as the best place to scale an ecom brand? I know most of your clients there.
Uh, that's an interesting question. I think there's a few facets to it because I do think the market is most mature in the US and land of opportunity and there's so many things in the US that you don't have in Europe. So I do think that's the case. But at the same time, I'm looking at some of the brands that I worked with in Europe, and it made me realize how untapped the European market still is and what kind of numbers and performance you see out of the European market is crazy. And then if you go Eastern Europe or if you go to the Baltics, it's even more incredible because there's not that many people doing what's happening in the US with ecom over there. The market size is of course smaller, but there's a lot of opportunity there as well. I just think for us in our position, the US made the most amount of sense because we also work 90%, 95% of our clients are in the US. Time zone is a lot easier to manage. And then, I've always wanted to live in the US and I never got to. So that's one thing that I definitely want to do.
For sure, that's interesting. Do you think there's like a play in Europe to scale brands and roll them out into different countries and different languages?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I think Eastern Europe is huge. Eastern Europe is untapped. And it has potential. Sure, purchasing power is lower, but it has huge scaling potential because while you might not expand in one country as you can expand in the US, you can just target the entire market, and then suddenly it's a lot larger. It's just people are different. They buy differently. Uh, they do things a little bit different, as you can imagine, but I think it's a huge untapped opportunity, and I've seen it. I've seen it with the brands, Sweden, Netherlands, Germany, even Denmark. I've seen it, and it's just incredible. And I'm looking over at even Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, the Baltics, and I see a lot of people starting to dropship in those countries, and it's still not huge. I think it's still like 5, 6 years behind the US, maybe more. And for that reason, it's just untapped. I mean, I look at my parents almost every week, they buy something off a Facebook ad. They don't need it, they don't know what it is, but almost every week. And then I look around and most people are like that. So I think there's huge potential there.
Okay. And what does the future look like for the marketing industry as a whole? Like aside from that, are there any other big trends coming?
Any other big trends? I feel like there was a huge boom during COVID. Obviously, the entire market is just completely different than it is today. I think that the market is going to not necessarily change a lot, but I feel like there's a lot of people that started ecom. Like to start an ecom brand, it's not it's not easy, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. I mean, you can create a Shopify store and have it live, especially now with AI. Like with AI, you can just do it in like a day. Doesn't mean you have the best product and everything, but you can do it. And I think over the coming period, a lot of that will filter out. So a lot of the really good brands will become even greater and will scale even more. And a lot of the brands that aren't so good, uh, you know, will go away, essentially.
Okay, so the market matures and consolidates.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And then we'll see, hopefully, the rest of Europe catching up to the US and the West.
Do you think it makes it easier for new brands to come in then? Or have you got to be like tier one straight out the gate and nail, creative media buying and everything?
I mean, it is definitely harder running ads, for example, than it was like 5 years ago, and it doesn't seem to be getting any easier by the day. Um, I don't think it's necessarily easier. I just see opportunity. I see opportunity. I see there's a lot of agencies, there's a lot of ecom brands, but there's still opportunity. If there are so many, there is still a piece of the market that you can grab. Again, granted that you have a good product, a good service that people want, um, I still see opportunity. And like I said, if you look over at Eastern Europe, if you look over at the UAE area as well, we've worked with a few brands there, lots of opportunity. And most people don't look there. I think the majority of people are very focused on the US and Canada and the UK. And the majority of the competition is in those areas. So a lot of opportunity. I still believe that.
Okay. And then for brands that are kind of interested in talking to you, one, can you just let them know, what is an ideal client for you guys, size, area, etc. And then two,
Mhm.
how do they get in contact?
For sure. So size, if you're doing, I want to say 1 million a year in revenue, product market fit, of course. Our best industries are beauty, jewelry, apparel, consumer packaged goods, but it could be really anything. We've got experience across pretty much any vertical. The only verticals that we don't work with is anything black hat or anything that, it's having a hard time advertising on Facebook. Outside of that, not a problem. Um, Geographically, it doesn't really matter. It can be anywhere. It really doesn't matter. And to get in touch, there's two easy ways or three easy ways. The websites, the social ads with the z.com. My LinkedIn, it's linkedin.com/Michael Rossetti. I'm not sure if there's anything in between. And then by email, Michael at thesocialads.com.
Perfect. Well, look, it's been a pleasure having you on here. Before we go, is there anyone else that you think would be a good guest on the podcast?
Yeah, you should definitely chat with one of my good friends, Lachazar, and maybe my co-founder. That would be a really good more on the actual service delivery and the paid advertising. I think that would be really cool to see him. Yeah,
Perfect. Well, Michael, thanks
awesome.
again for coming on and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Jordan, for having me here, and have a great day as well. Take care.